So as we continue with this idea of seeking this morning, I'd like to read to you out of Isaiah chapter 40, and it'll be on the screen, I think. All right, because I got to read it up there because it's not the same version here. But it says this: "Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, my cause is disregarded by my God? Do you not know, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." And we will highlight some of that this morning. How many people here have seen the new Star Wars movie? Okay, well, some of you. How many people here remember and saw the Star Wars movies when they were kids? Okay, still, not everybody in here. That's sad. That is sad. Well, today we're going to talk, this week and next week, we're actually going to talk about Star Wars and the wisdom of the Jedi. And of course, that's Yoda. Yoda is the master Jedi there. But you know, again, Star Wars right now is in front of everybody's faces again because it just came out, and it has broken many records because people want to go see it. Star Wars spoke to a generation, the original three, and a lot of people have become devoted fans and have followed all of the Star Wars things. People like it. I had a college roommate that had an addiction to collecting Star Wars toys and other things. He would go to the store, and if a new toy would come out, he would buy 3 of them. He would have to buy 1 to open, 1 to display, and 1 got packed away. I'm pretty sure this led to his divorce. I don't know that for sure, but he had a lot of time and energy and resources in these toys. And for some people, Star Wars isn't that big of a deal. During the holidays, Amanda's sister and her family was here, and she wanted to watch the original 3, Star Wars 4, 5, and 6, and she kept saying while we were watching this, "I just don't understand why this is good. I don't understand why this is such a big deal." And then I kicked her out of my house. I'm not kidding. But going serious, it reminded me of a book I read a few years ago called The Wisdom of the Jedi. And in the book, it talks about, it kind of relates what the Jedi and Star Wars is doing and parallels that to our spiritual lives and how we are to seek out God and how we are to fulfill these promises and do what we are called to do. And one of those things is that we are to search for God so that we can be renewed. And this word renew is up here because that is going to be our theme for this coming year. For 2016 is about renewal, being renewed, rekindling our love for God and our spiritual lives. So it will kind of be an overarching theme throughout the year. But in the Star Wars movie, Luke sets out to find some understanding, to understand who he is and what his role in this whole thing is about. And it's also about that battle within all of us, especially in the spiritual side of light versus darkness, good versus evil, or in Star Wars, the Force and the dark side. You know, this battle and this temptation that all of us get pulled in all of these different directions. And just to recap how we find Star Wars, especially in the first one in A New Hope, we find Luke on this desert planet. And he is with his aunt and uncle being separated, and that's who he raised. But we find Luke, and he's not very happy. He's searching for meaning. He understands that there has to be more to this life than just being a farmer on this desert planet and all of this. And he's questioning all of that. And he wants to be a fighter pilot like his dad, or the stories that he heard throughout his childhood. And so he was not very happy. He was searching. He was looking to be renewed. He was looking to be kind of rekindle this passion that he has for life, because he was draining him what he was doing. And we can all relate to that. Life can be draining. Or we go about our daily lives and it's the same thing over and over again, and we end up saying there has to be more to this. There has to be more to life than me just getting up in the morning, going to work, coming home, going to bed. There has to be something bigger. There has to be a purpose. So a lot of us can find ourselves and put ourselves in those shoes again, because we end up in those deserts. We end up lost. We end up dying sometimes on the inside because we don't have meaning, because we haven't found a purpose. So we are called to be renewed. I love that verse in Isaiah. You shall mount up like eagles. You shall mount up. You shall not grow faint. That if we realize the power that we have, if we realize what God does for us, this renewal, this refreshing, this purpose-filled life becomes a reality. You know, the first Star Wars movie is titled A New Hope, and that's what it is. People have lost hope because it seems the dark side has taken over. The Jedi have kind of gone into seclusion, so nobody knows what to do, and they're trying to figure that out. We, in this world today, can turn on the news and say there doesn't seem to be much hope out there because the darkness of the world seems to be winning at the moment. But God says, take a breath. Let me renew you so that you can mount up like eagles and bring the hope and be the hope that people are looking for. So Luke hears this. Obi-Wan Kenobi tells Luke, Luke, you have the Force and it is powerful, but you need some training. You can't handle it yourself. You need to know what you're supposed to do and your part in the story. So Luke goes on a mission to find Yoda. And he finds Yoda in this swamp, and Yoda starts to teach Luke. And of course, Yoda gets frustrated at Luke because Luke gives up a lot. And Luke says, oh, this is impossible. And Yoda finally says, listen, in order for you to be successful here, you're going to have to unlearn some things that you have learned. That can be a renewal. To hear things a little bit differently. To say, what does this mean for me today? And how can I apply it? We unlearn some of the things that are inside of us, all of those negative aspects, the giving up, maybe some way that somebody taught you to believe, and it becomes stale, and we become stagnant and discontent. But when we can hear things and do things a little bit differently, it renews us and it refreshes us, and we say, you know what? That is a powerful story, and I love the way that was put. I've always heard it this way, but I love that. That's why I read from the Message from time to time, so that we can hear the same verse put in a little bit differently. It kind of gets us to think a little bit differently. Or when we want to lose our faith. And I speak personally this morning from all of the things that happened in my youth when I gave up on God, and I've shared some of that. If it wasn't for other people to share the story with me in a different way, to help me understand that there are different ways to believing and understanding, I may not be here today. But because I was able to hear something fresh and new, it renewed me and filled me with hope, and it filled me with a purpose. So our faith matters. Where we place our faith matters. What we are searching for matters. We can get beat up all of the time. Life takes that away from us. But we have a hope that says, when I find God, like Luke found Yoda, I can make a difference. We can find our place in the story. Because we all want to be part of something. We all want to have something that is bigger and beyond ourselves. And sometimes we don't know. And Luke had those questions too. What can I possibly do? I'm not that big of a person. Whatever the excuses may be. And we hear it throughout the Bible. Every time God calls a prophet or calls somebody out in the Bible, they always start off by saying, "What are you talking about? I can't possibly do this. I can't." Moses, God, send somebody else. I stutter. I can't even speak. I'm not going to be effective. All of these people. And God said, "But with me, you will be renewed. With me, you will have the power to do what I am calling you to do." We are on this journey, and we need to be refreshed so that we can continue it and keep going. Another point is that this helps us to understand that there are people like Yoda and Obi-Wan to all of us. There are people that have helped us understand this spiritual life, that have helped us understand what God is about and what God can do in our lives. And we can all probably think about a couple people in our lives that helped shape our faith, that helped put things in perspective, gave us the wisdom that they have gained through years of experience, and helped us say, "Okay, you've tried it this way, how about we try it a little bit differently? You see God very small right now. Let's look at it and realize how big God is." We share that wisdom with each other so that we can grow, and then we are called to help other people grow as well. Help other people find that hope, which can be very humbling. To know that our jobs are to help other people find God and help other people fulfill the purposes in their life. Our task is to keep this story alive. If we do not share the story, if we do not share what God is doing in our lives, if we do not share the hope and the power that we have, it will die out. You know, it only takes one generation to lose something. I mean, you can look at that throughout probably your own families too. You know, my grandparents were from Italy, and they spoke Italian. My parents did not speak Italian. So now as my generation, all I know is a few swear words that my grandmother would say. But we've lost the language. We've lost that tradition because one generation decided, well, I'm not going to continue the story. I'm not going to teach the younger generations what I knew. And you lose it. And it is no different in our spiritual lives. If I do not share my story, if I do not share the hope that I have, if I do not share the struggles that I wrestle with and how we overcome them, this story starts to die out. And you can read in the news. It is not a secret that Christianity, that any religion, is on a downhill slope. And it's on a downhill slope not because our message isn't relevant anymore. It's on a downhill slope is because those of us in the church, those of us that believe, have failed to share the story. We have failed to continue the dialogue that says, here is what we need to do. And I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes we don't want to do that. But our task is to share that. Yoda, Obi-Wan, they teach Luke all of these ways to use the Force for good and how to make change and bring about change. And then they're supposed to take on some people and teach them. And it continues. Think about, especially the Old Testament. The majority of the Old Testament, we have it in a book. But the majority of the Old Testament for a long, long time was given to other people. But we question things a lot, and we want to give up. And one of my favorite lines in the Star Wars movie is when Luke is trying to raise the X-Wing fighter out of the muck. And he's trying, and he's telling Yoda, Yoda, you want the impossible. I can't finally do it. And of course, Yoda says, fine, step aside, I'll raise it. And he raises it. And Luke's amazed. And Yoda makes a statement, and he says, you either do or you do not. There is no try. We either share or we don't. We either find God and seek after God or we don't. There's really no middle ground. We are to seek God. We are to renew ourselves so that we may be able to continue our journeys and help other people come and find that as well. We are to model it. We need to find our purpose and our part in the story so that we can help other people find their parts as well. Again, we are all here, all of us, because somebody shared a story with us. Because somebody said this faith is an important thing, an important part of life. That God is a big, big part of what we are supposed to do. Somebody continued the story, and we are called to do the same. You know, I'm reminded of the 8th chapter of Nehemiah in the Old Testament. And I think it's around verses 8 or 9. And Israel has lost its hope. Israel has lost its purpose. It's lost the teachings. It hasn't been carrying out what God has shared with the people. And of course, now they are being invaded by other armies, and it is not fun for these people. And a lot of them are starting to lose their faith. But in that chapter, Nehemiah calls their attention and says, listen, you are feeling this way because you have forgotten the power. Because you have forgotten how powerful God is. And if you can remember that, there will be no more crying. Because in that verse it says that the people were weeping. That one, they were weeping because they were sad they lost it, but then also they were weeping because they were so excited that they found it again and they forgot how powerful God is. Think about our own lives when we go through hard times. A lot of us sometimes will lose our faith a little bit or question it and say, I don't know where God is. And we lose a little bit of hope and we get depressed and we get hurt. But when we figure out that God is a part of this and we pray and we spend time with God, it is amazing the power that comes and can lift us out of that and set us back down on the ground again and say, you can continue the story because you have been renewed. But it only matters if I seek. It only matters if I go out and try to do what God is calling me to do. If I don't, then it will not help my life, and I will not be able to help other people's lives as well. If you sit down and you don't do what you're supposed to do, the same thing will happen. A lot of people sit in church, not just this one, and they don't feel it. They're just here because, well, it's the thing I was always taught to do. I need to go to church. But it has lost its meaning. And the only reason it has lost its meaning is not because of what is happening up here or who's up here or who's sitting next to you. It has lost its meaning because if we were honest with ourselves, we have misplaced God. We have lost that purpose, that hope. This year, the beginning of the year, we can be renewed and say, God needs to be first. If you read in Revelation chapter 2, where John is writing to the churches, chapter 2 is a letter to the Ephesians, to the church in Ephesus. And does anybody remember what he tells them? You have lost your first love. Return to your first love. Meaning God. When we forget that, when God gets down on that list, we start to faint and we start to grow weary, as Isaiah said. But when we realize that God needs to come back and we need to come back to that first love, we are built up and we are refreshed and we are renewed. And it starts with us saying, God, I need you. God, teach me. Let me listen to those around me and get that wisdom so that I can continue this journey that you have put me on. And it starts with God creating a clean heart inside of us. Okay, John. Okay, whoever. It's your time. Let's renew you and strengthen you so that you can help other people come to me as well. But it starts with us seeking. You know that song that we listen to? Help me to find you. Before I give you my laundry list of wants, help me to seek you. Help me to feel you. I guarantee you, if God is at the top of this list and we are connected to this, those things that are on the list aren't that big of a deal. Those things that are on the list will end up taking care of themselves in a lot of powerful ways. It's one of the ways that we know we are connected to God, when we can continue the journey holding that list, knowing that God is in control. It's up to us. We can give up and let somebody else raise the stuff out of the water, or we can listen and we can find God and we can get the strength we need to lift it out ourselves and then help other people along the way. So as we venture this year, may we understand that we can be renewed and refreshed, and that we can be a powerful force for God and build that kingdom and bring other people along with us. Let us pray. Lord, wherever we are today, meet us. Some may be renewed and at the top of the peak. And then there may be some of us that are at the bottom of the mountain. Wherever we are, help us to mount up like eagles. Help us to seek you. Start changing us. Changing our hearts so that we can have that purpose and meaning, so that we may be able to share that with this hurting world. It starts with us. It starts with us being renewed so that we can continue the race. So be with us. As all of God's people said. As we leave this place, I leave you with these words out of Nehemiah chapter 8. This day is sacred to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep. This day is sacred to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. May we understand that we are all sacred. That we can smile in spite of what is going on because we know that God is our strength. Let us go with that hope this morning. And one final time, all of God's people said,